California's flood insurance industry does not want you to see this video, because the moment you understand which towns the water simply cannot reach, the risk maps stop being mysterious and start being a shopping list. And let me deal with the obvious objection first. California doesn't get hurricanes, except it kind of does now, because in August 2023, Tropical Storm Hilary became the first tropical storm to hit Southern California in 84 years, dropped more rain on Palm Springs in 1 hour than the town had ever recorded, cut off every road out of the city, and put 26 million Californians under flood warnings. And California's real hurricane season has a different name entirely: the atmospheric river, the vapor fire hose from the tropics that in the winter of 1861 to 1862 rained for 43 straight days, turned the Central Valley into an inland sea, drowned Sacramento under 10 feet of water, forced the entire state legislature to flee to San Francisco for 6 months, and nearly bankrupted California. Scientists say a repeat, the arc storm, is coming eventually, and it may be a bigger threat than earthquakes. So today I'm counting down 12 California towns that stayed dry through all of it. The towns the gold rush miners built on ridges on purpose. The mountain villages the water physically cannot climb, and the #1 town that watched the Great Flood of 1862 from above while the state capital drowned. If buying on high ground before everyone else figures this out sounds like your kind of channel, hit subscribe, because I read the elevation maps so your crawl space stays boring. Let's count it down. Number 12, Susanville. Susanville sits at 4,200 feet in Lassen County, in the high desert rain shadow east of the Sierra Crest, which means the atmospheric rivers that drown the valleys arrive here as manageable snow and modest rain. The Susan River runs through a canyon below town rather than through living rooms. FEMA flood zones barely touch the residential grid, and homes still list under $300,000. The trade-offs are real: isolation, winter, and an economy that has struggled since the state moved to close its prison. But when the storm maps turn purple over Sacramento, Susanville watches it on television. Number 11, Yreka. Yreka is a gold rush town of about 7,800 near the Oregon border, sitting at 2,600 feet in the Shasta Valley, protected by the same rain shadow that keeps this corner of the state semi-arid, while the coast 60 miles west gets absolutely hosed. The historic Miners Street district survives from the 1850s. Homes run far below state averages, and the flood risk profile is among the lowest of any incorporated California town. The honest caveat is the one that applies to half this list. What the North State lacks in water risk, it carries in wildfire risk, and Yreka has evacuated for fires in recent years. California always charges you somewhere. Here, the bill just doesn't arrive by river. Number 10, Bishop. Bishop sits at 4,150 feet in the Owens Valley, one of the driest inhabited valleys in America, wedged between the Sierra Nevada and the White Mountains in a double rain shadow that squeezes storms nearly dry before they arrive. Average annual rainfall is around 5 inches. 5. The town is the gateway to Sierra fishing and climbing, hosts mule days every Memorial Day weekend, and bakes bread at the famous Eric Schatz Bakery that people drive hours to buy. Flash flooding off the mountains can touch canyon mouths, but the town core's flood exposure is minimal, because you cannot flood a place the sky mostly ignores. Number 9, Ramona. Ramona sits on a 1,400-foot plateau in the San Diego backcountry, a ranching and winery town of about 21,000, where the terrain drains away in every direction and mapped flood zones are a thin ribbon along a creek most residents couldn't point to. When Hilary swamped the desert floor communities in 2023, the plateau towns like Ramona took rain and moved on. The fairness beat is serious here. Ramona sits in wildfire country and burned badly in 2003 and 2007, so this is high ground with a different hazard attached. In California, elevation is a trade, not a gift. Ramona traded water for fire and made peace with the terms. Number 8, Sonora. Sonora is a gold rush city of about 5,000 in the Sierra foothills at 1,800 feet, built by miners along a ridge and ravine landscape where water has somewhere better to be than your basement. The historic downtown, with its 1850s storefronts and the red church on the hill, floods approximately never, while the great rivers of the Mother Lode, the Stanislaus and Tuolumne, run in canyons far below, doing their raging where no one lives. The miners who built these towns had watched the 1862 flood erase the valley below them. They took notes. 160 years later, their real estate decisions are still cashing checks. Number 7. Big Bear Lake. Big Bear Lake sits at 6,750 feet in the San Bernardino Mountains, so far above Southern California's floodplains that the concept barely translates. When Hillary hit in 2023, the mountain took heavy rain and shrugged, while the desert below turned into a rescue operation. The town's famous residents are a pair of bald eagles named Jackie and Shadow, whose nest cam has made them international celebrities, and the local hazard is the opposite of flooding. The 2023 blizzard buried the community under so much snow that a state of emergency was declared for too much frozen water. Big Bear will never flood. It might occasionally need to be dug out. Pick your inconvenience. Number 6. Idyllwild. Idyllwild is a mile-high village in the San Jacinto Mountains, all cedar cabins, art galleries, and pine air, and its most famous public official is Mayor Max, a golden retriever, part of an unbroken line of elected dog mayors that this town maintains with complete sincerity. At 5,400 feet, riverine flooding is geometrically impossible. Water leaves Idyllwild in a hurry, downhill, toward the desert towns that made the news in 2023. The village's real vulnerabilities are fire and the occasional washed-out access road below town, which is the mountain's way of reminding you that the flood risk didn't vanish, it just moved to somebody else's elevation. If you're still watching, the top 5 is where the 1862 flood becomes the main character, so hit that like button, because your great-great-grandparents' real estate instincts are about to get audited. Number 5. Julian. Julian is the apple pie capital of the San Diego Mountains, a gold rush town at 4,200 feet where the entire economy runs on pie, cider, and autumn leaves, and where flooding is something residents read about happening to other people. The town sits on high ground at the crest of the backcountry. Storms deliver snow a few times each winter, delighting a county that otherwise never sees it, and the mapped flood risk in the town site is effectively nil. The caveat rhymes with the rest of the mountains. The 2003 Cedar Fire came close enough to teach the town its real enemy. Julian's flood plan is gravity. Its fire plan is everything else. Number 4. Tehachapi. Tehachapi sits at 4,000 feet in the mountain pass between the Central Valley and the Mojave, a town of 13,000 where the wind is so relentless that one of the world's first large wind farms was built here. Thousands of turbines spinning over the hills like the town's own security detail. The famous Tehachapi Loop below town is a railroad spiral so ingenious that trains cross over themselves, and rail fans travel from around the world to watch. Hydrologically, Tehachapi is a fortress, perched at the top of its own watershed, shedding water down toward the valley and the desert in both directions. I'll be honest about the fine print. The town sits near the Garlock Fault and the wind will slam your car door for you, rudely. But when the atmospheric rivers aim their fire hose at California, Tehachapi is standing on the nozzle end. Number 3. Grass Valley. Grass Valley, at 2,500 feet in the Sierra foothills, was built by Cornish miners from England who came for the hard rock gold of the Empire Mine, one of the richest in California history, and left behind a town that still sells Cornish pasties on Mill Street like the 1870s never ended. The miners tunneled 367 miles of shafts under this town and built the streets on the ridges above the ravines, which means Grass Valley drains like a colander and floods like a rock. The Empire Mine is a state park now, the downtown is one of the best preserved in the gold country, and the flood maps are nearly blank. The Cornish knew exactly 2 things: mining and where water goes. Both are still holding. Number 2. Nevada City. Nevada City is Grass Valley's even prettier sister, 4 miles up the road, a Victorian hill town of 3,000 people, stacked on ridgetops at 2,500 feet, with gas lamps, white church steeples, and a downtown so intact it's a designated historic district. And here is its credential. Nevada City stood through the winter of 1861 to 1862, the worst flood in California's recorded history. the one that put the Central Valley under an inland sea and destroyed 1 in 8 houses statewide. And while the town below on the rivers took catastrophic damage, the ridgetop core endured, because the miners had built where the water wasn't. Today the Yuba River rages in its canyon far below, a world-class swimming destination in summer and a monster in January, and Nevada City watches it from the balcony seats it purchased in 1850. The fire risk is real, and the town takes it seriously. The flood risk was solved by the founders, permanently, with their feet. Number 1. Auburn. Auburn is the town that turned high ground into an identity. This gold rush city of 14,000 sits on a ridge at 1,200 feet in the Sierra foothills, directly above the confluence of the North and Middle Forks of the American River, which run in canyons plunging hundreds of feet below the courthouse, close enough to hear in a wet winter, and geometrically incapable of reaching a single living room. In the Great Flood of 1862, while Sacramento drowned under 10 feet of water 35 miles downhill, while the new governor, Leland Stanford, reportedly traveled to his own inauguration by rowboat, and while the legislature abandoned the capital for 6 months, Auburn stayed dry and kept mining. The state nearly went bankrupt. Auburn's problem that winter was mud on Main Street. Today the town has converted its geography into a lifestyle, branding itself the endurance capital of the world as the Finnish region of the Western States 100, the most famous ultramarathon on Earth, run through those same canyons the floods can't escape. The gold-domed courthouse still crowns the ridge. Old Town's 1850s storefronts still lean on each other companionably, and when the arc storm scenario maps show the Central Valley returning to an inland sea, the shaded danger zones lap at the base of Auburn's hills and stop. The miners of 1849 didn't have FEMA maps, satellite data, or a single meteorologist. They had wet boots and pattern recognition, and 175 years later, their town is still the driest smart decision in California. That's the list. 12 California towns where the water has never won, and the elevation does the insurance paperwork. If this video changed how you read a listing, subscribe, because next week I'm covering the towns on the opposite list, the ones the arc storm maps quietly condemn, and that video should be required viewing. Drop a comment with the high ground town I missed, and I'll see you in the next